and more of your neighbors are supporting and visiting Nicaragua, and your president cannot be very happy about that. Who are these people? Why are they going to Nicaragua? And does their support actually assist a government that your president would like to see overthrown? We'll be talking about the visitor to Nicaragua when we next meet right here on Speakout. Hello again, everybody. I'm Brent Triest. This is Speakout. Tonight we talk about the visitor to Nicaragua with my two guests. Let me introduce you to them. Catherine Gonzalez lived in Nicaragua for 16 years. During the Somoza years, she did volunteer work and taught English. And after the revolution, beginning in 1981, she has assisted Americans visiting Nicaragua. Sitting next to her is Gary Frink. Gary has for over 30 years lived and traveled in Central and Latin America. He is an attorney, a Republican activist, and a radio commentator on station WSMA AM. He has recently himself returned from Nicaragua. Thank you both for joining us. Let me ask you first, Catherine, who are these people? Who are going down to Nicaragua? Who's visiting?
They're ordinary U.S. citizens, and I think they're farmers, they're merchants, they're teachers, they're religious people, but just regular, ordinary U.S. citizens who are concerned about our getting into a war in Central America.
Let me ask the person sitting next to you for a moment. Let's talk about this. The president and the administration cannot be very happy that people are going down and visiting with the Sandinista government.
It's a free country.
But he's not very happy about it.
But if they weren't happy, if the administration was not happy, they should have cut off relations years ago. I've advocated that and still do. They're either our enemy or they're not. I think there's a lot of confusion. So the lady is right. They are U.S. citizens. They are not on our block list. We're not prohibited from going down. In fact, it's the only communist country I've ever been in where you don't even need a visa. I just decided to go Monday, got on the airplane and went down.
Can we say, I mean, are you about to say really then President Reagan and his administration, they really say, hey, fine, it's okay with me, we're happy about it? You wouldn't go so far to say they're happy about it.
I wouldn't go so far to say they're happy, but at the same time, it is a free country. And if people want to go down there for whatever reasons, I just got back. I got back Saturday. I met two kinds of Americans there. The hardcore, blame American first, leftist, pro-communist, and the rather nice, gee, I want to come down here and help, and I don't know a lot about politics, but these are people and I want to help these people. So I met both types.
Are you finding that visitors here from America are going to visit both representatives from the Sandinista government as well as the Contras?
No, they're not going in to visit the Contras. They're going down on these quote peace end quote tours, and they're going into the villages and they're taken through the hospitals and they're given the heart and flowers, and they don't speak Spanish. They don't have any experience in Latin America. It's really a joke, but they do not get in to see the other side.
Catherine, do you want to? You're just sitting there ready to go. Oh, come on, go ahead.
I arranged for several years while I was working in other capacities in Nicaragua for the revolution, different tour groups with Augsburg College Group, and we always set up interviews with opposition people, large plantation growers, coffee growers, clergy that was either in the middle or against the revolution. We never had a tour group go through that did not see both sides of the issues. And there are a lot of realist Americans down there, too, not just idealists and hardcore leftists.
I've got some people in the audience tonight that have been down there themselves. Let me talk to you. What's your name?
Julie Beutel.
You've been down there?
Yes.
When?
I was there from August of '84 until March of '86.
Well, then tell me who you are. I mean, people out there want to know who's visiting, why you're visiting. Well, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a high school teacher in a Catholic school in Detroit, and I speak Spanish fluently. I have a year-old son. I'm married. I was born and raised in Detroit. Do you want to know more about my time down there?
Well, I want to know about why you went down there, and tell me a little bit about your time down there as well.
I joined a group called Witness for Peace, which is a faith-based grassroots organization that started from North Americans and pretty much is independent down there. We sponsor groups of what we call short-term teams or delegations of North Americans from all over the states to go down to Nicaragua and see for themselves what it's like down there. And we go out into the countryside and they live with families. They don't get taken around by government officials through hospitals. They live on their own with families, and there are plenty of Spanish-speaking people. In fact, every long-term volunteer, such as myself, that lives there is pretty fluent in Spanish. I'm quite fluent in Spanish. And we don't spend hardly any time with government officials at all. We don't have to ask permission to go places. We have our own bus. We hire Nicaraguan civilians to drive our bus, and we do the translating.
Were you on the barge that was stopped?
Yeah, we were kidnapped by the Contra for 29 hours.
What happened?
There were a group of us, Witness for Peace volunteers, as well as press people, to go down a river called the Rio San Juan, which is on the border of Costa Rica, south of Nicaragua. Now, the river has been very dangerous for years, and we knew that. There have been plenty of people killed along that river, and we wanted to do it as what we would call a prayer service or vigil. We knew it was very dangerous. No civilians had sailed down that river for about a year. In fact, after we started to make the plans, Eden Pastora himself, who at that time was the leader of the other Contra group called Arde, which lived in Costa Rica and worked out of Costa Rica, he threatened to open fire on our boat if we continued to go on with our plans. We did anyway. We were pretty much done. We had sailed up the river, had prayer services in places where people had died.
How long were you held?
We were held for 29 hours.
Okay, you got to be thinking during those 29 hours that it's just scary stuff. It's not something you're going to take casual.
Yeah, they marched us through the jungle at gunpoint.
Okay, I've got other people here. Thank you so much. I want to talk to some other people that here. Come on, stand up for 1 second. Oh, okay. Before I fall off the platform here, tell me your name and tell me what you think about all this. The visitors going down there.
My name is Emil Arca, and in terms of the visitors going down there, I thought one of the most interesting comments was made by a gentleman by the name of Alvaro Baldazan. He was a former chief investigator for the Minister of the Interior of Nicaragua, and he's described the Minister of the Interior's attitude towards American visitors going down there. The Interior Minister describes them as my army of useful fools, and to that end, he has two offices set up in Nicaragua. He has one office which is decorated with crucifixes, other religious symbols, and so forth, which he uses to receive what he calls his army of useful fools. And as Baldazan, who used to be one of his right-hand men until he defected in 1985, has described it, his real work is done in an office with pictures of Marx, Engels, and Lenin. It just shows you the purely cynical way that the Nicaraguan government is manipulating American visitors.
All right, those that have visited, that feel duped here, or go ahead, stand up, please.
My name is Sharon Feldman, and I'm a clinical social worker in Birmingham. And I've been working with people as a professional for years and years. And the thing that I saw more than anything was people. I visited with everyday people. And I went to cooperatives, and I was in the city, and I talked with people. And I didn't see that manipulation. And I really have a good sense of people. And I saw them really involved in what was happening, excited about what they were doing, and very interested in changing things.
Either one of you, go ahead.
And did you come back and did you give speeches at all? Did you speak in favor of the communist government and how good they are and how they brought education and medical and all that other nonsense? Did you do that?
Well, I really resent the word nonsense. I came back and told what I saw, what I spoke to the people about, and what the people said to me.
And you're also fluent in Spanish?
I can speak Spanish pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, others, I need to hear from others here. Okay, go ahead, stand up. Careful here, there you go.
Well, I just have lived long enough to know that whenever the communists have had these peace-sponsored things, way back in over 20 years ago, Rhodesia, remember how many church groups urged that Rhodesia, must be liberated, and then we had Cuba, must be liberated, and Iran, and all you have to do is, I think these people are very dedicated, many of them very good people, and I'm sure they're sincere in talking to the peasants, but they are in a regime of oppression. Look around from history. These people, they have nothing else to say. I mean, they cannot. Look at in Cuba. When you go to Cuba today, there's still people that go.
After Cuba.
It's
totally
patterned
is,
over and over again.
Yeah.
And just think of the people in the jails rotting away. And
9,000 political
It's a
prisoners in
sad
that little
thing.
country.
They are not free. Do you remember in
Have you ever been there?
Do you remember
Have you ever been there? Have
to
you?
Nicaragua?
Yes.
I'm anxious to go, but I know already the pattern, so I would learn from history. I know what it is.
Okay.
It's Iran all over again. More people were killed in Vietnam after the war, and we had the Jane Fondas that went and said, wonderful, marvelous. I mean, but look what happened. The people were killed. We are responsible. Americans, do-gooders, are responsible for people being killed by the millions and the boat people, and we're responsible.
Okay, I got to go. I got a lot of people here.
I
Thank
think
you.
we should learn from history.
All right, Catherine,
Brent,
go ahead.
I'd like to answer that. I think, first of all, that we have to realize that the Nicaraguan people are perfectly free to speak out against their government, and they do it constantly.
That's not
in the
true.
streets,
Simply
all
not
the
the
time.
truth. They had La Prensa closed down for
No.
22 months until just
Did
last
you
week.
talk
One at a
to
time,
people
all I ask
on
is
the
one at a
street?
time.
I interviewed the head of La Prensa last week.
And she spoke completely freely to you, did she not?
Well, yes,
As
in
did
her own
anyone
office.
in
They
the
just
street.
have allowed her to.
She has always spoken freely.
They closed La Prensa down for
Yes,
22
exactly.
months. They
No,
had
no
just
one
because of
denies
the,
that.
quote, peace pact, end quote, allowed them to open up. Those people
All
were
right.
scattered.
No
they
one
had no work.
denies
They had
that
no
La Prensa
ration
was
cards.
closed. But La Prensa was closed because it was part of the U.S.'s destabilization plan
That's
against
simply
Nicaragua.
not true.
We
That's
know,
simply not true.
excuse me, we know that is true because the editor, Pedro Joaquin Chamorro Jr., admitted to receiving some funds from the Americans, from the CIA. That's done through a front organization, but it was admitted that they received CIA
His
money.
mother
the
owns
CIA,
the newspaper. His
Yeah,
father
exactly.
was killed.
His brother heads the Sandinista newspaper.
Okay,
His uncle
let me
heads
just
the other
butt in here for 1 minute,
supporter
and I'll tell
of
you
the
why. Because
other
the
newspaper.
issue is complicated and large, and I want to hear a little bit about it. Although the discussion started this way, as it relates to visiting Nicaragua, it started the discussion because some are claiming that the visitors are a bit naive, that they're actually, okay, that was the claim that got the discussion going. Let's get back out to the visitors and hear what they have to say. Go ahead.
I think it's important to point out that in Nicaragua, there are 12 political parties. The people there did not vote for the best of two evils.
Did you visit Nicaragua?
No, I did not.
What do you
but
think of those that do?
I think they're wonderful, moral people that are standing up for justice.
Okay, thank you.
Communist
All right,
justice.
I'm a correspondent, and I went with one of these delegations down to Nicaragua, okay?
Okay.
And on the delegation, we did meet with opposition groups such as the Independent Liberal Party, the Permanent Commission for Human Rights, also it COSUP, the Council of Superior Enterprises. And it wasn't the fact that we didn't meet with these opposition groups, but just with this delegation, okay, the delegates refused to listen to these people at all. I mean, their minds were made up before they went on the trip. I'm asking, and also, right, when we were in the system...
Whose minds were made up? You mean the people you were going with?
Yes.
How were they made up? They were made up in one of the directions? I mean, they were either pro...
Let me give you an example.
Okay, quick one, because I want to move on.
Meeting with the Independent Liberal Party, right, after we got like halfway through to it, delegates started saying, wait, we've heard this already before, you know. At the end of it, one of the delegates goes up to the speaker, okay, he was the Vice Secretary General of the party, and she just starts cussing him out in Spanish.
All right, so the visitors have their minds made up before they go. They don't go with an open mind.
One delegation, all right? I don't know about other delegations,
Okay.
though, but I'd give you some advice to any delegation that goes down to Nicaragua. Listen to these opposition groups. Say, prove this to us. I mean, what proof can you show us?
Okay, good. Let me go on. I got a lot of people. Thank you. Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that I think one of the areas that we constantly find inflaming is the use of terms like communist. And when you return from Nicaragua, people like the revered gentleman on the platform take that word communist and take the word communist and kind of twist it a little. And I think that we've had a history in our country of not understanding very clearly what some of these labels mean.
These are
and we fling them.
hardcore.
And so visiting Nicaragua really opened my eyes a lot to the emotional blocks that people have. And so we use labels instead of thinking.
Before you left, did you meet opposition like among family, friends? What were their feelings about you going?
I did not personally meet opposition. I met concern. And I think the concern basically stemmed from confusion in our media about what, in effect, is going on in Nicaragua. I found that poor people were beginning to have some power in their lives.
And I went with the delegation of 4 people.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. Okay.
Brent, to make it clear,
Communism,
it's
people have power in their lives.
hardcore. They're hardcore killer communists.
Is
to
it
make
communist
it clear.
for people to
Oh,
have
they have no
power in
power.
their lives?
They
Yes,
have
they
no
do.
power.
Right,
It's
you
called.
got it. I got somebody out here.
It's
have
called the
power in their lives.
dictatorship of the proletariat. They have no power. That's nonsense.
People go to Nicaragua to see where people
please.
are being listened to by their government.
Oh,
the
that's
rich are no
absurd.
longer being listened.
That's
The
absurd.
Sandinistas changed their agrarian reform
that's not
plan
true.
because the peasants wanted individual
It's simply
plots.
not true.
This was a change in 1985 made in the agrarian reform law because they listened to peasants.
Okay, out here again.
I visited Nicaragua with a labor delegation, and one of the things that we all found out was something about the history of Nicaragua. Our government has supported the Somoza regime for 30-some-odd years, the most brutal dictatorship in the hemisphere, and here we are concerned about rights of those folks. The point is we've supported dictatorships, and now they have a chance to develop their own destiny. They've taken a position, and this we heard continually from peasants to leaders at all kinds of levels. They basically said, this is not a problem about the East and the West. It's not between Russia and the United States. It's between the North and the South. United States and us. We want the right to determine our destiny, and they should have the right. It's a country of 2.5 to 3 million people. Half of the people are under 15 years of age. We're declaring a war on that country, on those people. And the other thing we discovered, we talked with opposition, people who criticized the Sandinista government. And what's most amazing, when we talked to some of the business people, they criticized them and they said, you know, there should not be an embargo on this country. It doesn't serve a purpose. These are the opposition people who are taking a harder position than Reagan and the administration.
All right, thank you.
The first thing they...
Go ahead, Gary. Go ahead.
The first thing they did, I mean, I don't know what labor movement you're in, but the first thing the communists did was to kill off...
The American labor movement.
Which one? Which union?
American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees.
All right, fine. You're not a bricklayer, or... The first thing they did was to kill off... The first thing they did was to kill off the free unions.
All right,
Okay.
listen, we're going to... One more.
First of all, when the Sandinista government took over, our government was the first one to step in with aid to the Sandinistas until we found out that it was a communist government. We refused to support them after that. Second of all, I think this young lady who was taken by the Contras was lucky to have been captured by the Contras, because we have spoken to people who have been captured by the Sandinistas.
Have you been down there?
No, but I spoke to a gentleman living in exile in Florida who was an ex-Sandinista, who was arrested by the Sandinistas because as a businessman he spoke out against them. He was locked in a metal box for 3 months. His eyesight is permanently damaged. He will never be the same, and he is living in exile in Florida now. His son is among the Contras. So I think this lady was lucky to have been captured by the Contras and not by the Sandinistas.
All right, go ahead.
The atrocities of the Contras are so much more than those of the Sandinistas. There's no comparison.
Hi, my name's Roberto Javier Frisancho, and I represent the Coalition for Democracy in Latin America. We're a group based in Ann Arbor. First of all, like I said, you should have no illusions whatsoever about the ideology of the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. First of all, when you go to speak to someone, you have to remember, when you speak to someone in Nicaragua, when you speak to someone in Nicaragua, you have two types of people. You have the small guy and the big guy. First of all, when a guy who's overwhelmingly pro-Sandinista, everybody, including big guys and small guys, can tell who you are. I mean, especially the way you dress. The small guy, he has more to fear by you. That's why if you go up and ask him if everything is nice and beautiful, he's going to say yes, because he knows that the next day, if he doesn't, his brother or someone will get drafted, a draft notice the next day morning. And the thing is, if he disappears, no one will notice it. Whereas, for example, if we left a Chamorro, La Prensa would disappear, the whole world would notice. That's why she has the right and she has no fear, because she's just too big. You have to understand that.
Okay, now let me ask you.
But now, okay.
But I don't want you to read to me now. If you read, no, I don't have time for you to read to me. Have you been down there yourself?
No.
All right. Have you talked to those that have been down there?
Yes.
And you feel the way you feel because of who you've talked to?
Yes.
How many people have you talked to?
I can't estimate, 20 or more.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for sharing. Let me just get up here. One second. Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
It's significant to me that a gentleman like this, who is a supporter of the Contras, is fighting for the overthrow of the Sandinista government, will do everything in his power to do what he can to detract from that revolution, is invited and welcomed in Nicaragua to see whatever he wants to see, to talk to whatever opposition leaders he wants to, and come back to this country and organize against them. That is not the sign of a totalitarian government that keeps out its opposition. Jean Kilpatrick just went down there, one of the most ardent conservatives in this country, one of the most right-wing ideologues in this country, who's spoken against them. There is no prohibition against travel for those people in Nicaragua. On the other hand, in this country, as you know, running for Congress, or as you should know, This country systematically denies visas to writers of other countries who have an ideology that's different than that of a conservative, and they're excluded from this country.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Go ahead. Stand up. Go ahead. I'll get you. Go ahead.
I went down there without a visa, and that amazed me. The screws have not been totally tightened yet.
There are no
Go ahead.
screws.
I'm coming to this whole issue from a very personal standpoint. My name is Virginia Smith, and my brother, Father James Guadalupe Carney, was killed in Honduras. He was a U.S. priest. So I was catapulted into our whole U.S. Central American policy in 1983. I went to Honduras. I went to Nicaragua. I was not swayed by anybody else at the time. I was going down to investigate my brother's death, and I'll tell you what I found. In Honduras, that's where you find the rule by the military, and it's frightening. I went to Nicaragua, and I felt free as a bird. And I only know because we talked to embassy people, we talked to villagers, we talked to people who were working with the government in Nicaragua. We were free to go wherever we wanted. And I'll tell you, of the two countries, I'd sure choose to live in Nicaragua.
All right, thank you. Let me go ahead. Okay, go ahead, stand up.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that people telling all these bad stories about Nicaragua have never been there. I think that's why it's very important that people do travel there, that are allowed to travel there, because it's not, it is a country where there is free travel. It's not like East Germany or someplace where you have to get permission to go places. And the people who are telling stories here, including myself, have been there and have seen the place. And one of the indications of the level of ignorance in some of the discussion here is the use of the word communism. The Nicaraguan economy is 60% privately owned, both in industry and agriculture. That is true. That's
what finish do you have?
All right, let him go, and Gary, you'll go right. Let him finish, then Gary, you'll respond.
And you know, I think if people knew anything about it, they wouldn't call it a communist country even.
Okay, thanks. Gary, go ahead. You can respond to it.
I mean, that's so totally absurd on its face. It's a Marxist, Leninist, killer, communist country, patterned after Cuba.
Please, some facts. Don't just throw the rhetoric at us anymore.
There are 5,000 Cubans. There are 5,000 Cubans.
And what do they do? What do they do?
They are in the Army, the Secret Service, and the
They are teachers and doctors.
I'm back in the audience. I'm back in the audience.
These are the ones that you see. The Autonomy Project in Nicaragua is now an example for all of Latin America, of giving autonomy to the region where the Mosquito Indians live.
Umberto Bailey, Nicaraguan, ex-Marxist, Leninist, ex-Sandinista supporter until he became disenchanted with the movement, is also the ex-editorial page editor of La Prensa. He left that country. He left that country so he could speak out freely, which he could not do down there. And he has documented carefully and profusely in his book, Breaking Faith, all of the abuses, torture, killings that have gone on under the auspices of the Sandinistas.
What do you think of the visitors that go down there? That's what I want to know. What do you think about the Americans that go down and visit Nicaragua?
I think they go down in good faith, but I think this. When they see ordinary people, they are ordinary people whom the Sandinistas have carefully directed. Those are the towns they can go to.
All right, that's what I hear. That's what I hear as the other voice. I usually hear the fact that they're good intentioned, but, you know, they're a little naive. That's what I hear. Have you been down there?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Brenda McClain, and I went on a delegation with people from Detroit back in June, and my only comment to this discussion is that as long as people are allowed to go to Nicaragua, they can form their own opinions. If we sit back and wait for either side to decide how they're going to tell us what's going on in Nicaragua, we're never going to know. I think our country and our president doesn't want people like me to go down there, because when I went down there, I came back feeling like my country is once again enthralling us into something and lying to us through the media, and the only way I'm going to know that is if I go. And I'm not a stupid person, and I don't think that I need someone else to come and tell me that this is a totalitarian, Marxist, communist country that's hurting people. I think we were hurting people down there in our support of the Somoza government, and that right now what we need to do is back off and allow those people to decide their own paths. And that's why I can go, because I'm an American. And if you don't want me to go, then you're trying to lie to me even further.
No, fine, go down. Head on down, have a good time.
I'd like to know how the visitors feel about the fact that the Sandinistas are being supported by the Libyan government and other terrorist government.
All right, visitor, give me a visitor. I'll go back to one of my original visitors. 1 second, stand up. Give me an answer to that question.
Well, when I lived down there, and anybody who was down there and stays there for any length of time quickly sees that the Contra, who are supported by my North American government, are torturing and murdering civilians daily. There are thousands of Nicaraguan civilians, not army people, who have been tortured, have their eyes gouged out, have their penis cut off by the Contra. The Contra are terrorists. They're far worse than the Sandinistas ever have been and ever even come close to being.
Far worse, and you know this, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Sure you do. Sure you do.
Staging provided by Superstructures in Dearborn. Speakout is a production of Continental Cablevision and BST Productions in cooperation with WTVS Channel 56, Detroit.
ABC's John Quinones is in Managua.
Amid all the talk of peace, the Contra War seems only to be gaining momentum here in the Nicaraguan countryside. An early morning attack on this cooperative left 3 people dead. An entire farming community was leveled. This week's assault on El Juste was the latest in a series of Contra attacks in a region just 100 miles from Managua. Among the dead, an elderly woman burned in her home. This man's wife and 2-month-old daughter were wounded. Reagan is responsible for all this, he says. He's the one who supports the Contras. The survivors, who were left with just the clothes they were wearing, say these kind of Contra attacks only bolster their support for the Sandinistas. The Contras say they want to wipe out communism, this woman told us, but I don't see any communism here. John Quinones, ABC News, El Juste, Nicaragua.
And as for the Contras, supported by the Reagan administration, as ABC's Peter Collins reports, the talk of peace seems to be only that.
At dawn, it is eerily beautiful. A peaceful setting of slow, natural rhythms. But this is also a war zone, a setting for a bitter 6-year struggle that may not end soon.
Right now, everybody's talking about peace, especially the Sandinistas, but this is the peace we have. This is the peace they want. They want us killed.
In a makeshift jungle hospital, Dr. Henry Zavala looks for a bullet lodged in the brain of a young Contra ambushed a few miles away.
Every day we have wounded, every day we have deads, every day.
More than 4,200 Contras have been killed. Thousands more have been wounded.
Corten, arriba.